Aloha! I am here with another Ascension Cast. I am Brian Daniel Edwards with special guest.
Sarah
Wrong
Wessells.
camera. So we met through the Wild Success Masters of NLP program and also went through the business launch program through there. So we've been kind of aiding and assisting with each other, and we discovered that we're actually very much on the same path. So that's why I've always branded as Infinite Love Movement. It's not just about me, it's about changing the world. And the bigger the team is, the more expertise we bring on board, the more people we can impact. So Sarah is definitely one of those people that is amazing at what she does. She's been in the mental health industry for a very long time. And I'll defer to you and let you introduce yourself.
So yeah, I got my beginnings in mental health, as Brian said. I started with right out of high school, straight into a bachelor's program for social work, and then I went straight into a master's program for social work. And I was, working in the mental health field through my master's program for 12 or 13 years, like a really long time. And during that time, I worked in so many different areas in mental health. I worked with people who had physical disabilities. I worked with people who had emotional disabilities. I worked with people who were autistic. I worked in mental health. As a mental health therapist. I worked in suicide prevention. I was literally all over the place. So that's where I came from. And during that time, I was also parenting a child who was experiencing emotional disturbances, we'll call it. And I'll explain a little bit more why I don't really want to go into diagnoses later, but for now, we'll just call it that. And throughout that process of being on both sides of the coin, I learned a lot. And I came to understand that I don't really believe in a lot of what the world of mental health teaches and the fundamentals of how mental health is treated here in the States, at least. And so Brian and I were discussing this, and we decided we really need to have a webcast on this subject because it's kind of really important, and most people just don't have the information. So the main thing that we discussed, and the main thing that I noticed, is that a lot of the diagnoses within the DSM manual, the diagnostics manual for mental health, a lot of the diagnoses really come down to one of, at the time I was thinking two, but after speaking with Brian and, really going through my own spiritual journey, I've realized there are three. They come down to three possible causes. That is it. So there's absolutely no reason for all of I don't even know how many diagnoses are actually in there. It's a lot. And they're very nuanced for no reason whatsoever. But one of the biggest issues is that they really just tell you what the person is experiencing, like what the symptoms are, and they don't tell you what's causing the problem. But then mental health professionals are taught to treat the symptoms and never treat the problem, or not treat the problem very well. I learned as I learned after I left the mental health world, there's so much more than, the conscious mind, which is what a lot of treatment revolves around, is, what you feel and experience in your conscious self. And most treatment never even goes anywhere near the subconscious. And that's 95% of what you're experiencing anyway. So a lot of it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Brian, I'm going to break here.
I'm completely on board with that. So much of modern medicine, not just in the mental health field, is about treating the symptoms. And
yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of the medical industry has, especially the pharmaceutical industry, has a fiduciary duty to the shareholders, not the patients, not the people being treated, but to the shareholders to increase profits. So to do that, to cure people would be not good for profits. So if you can have pharmaceuticals that basically create people to be a legal addict, whether it's in the mental health with antidepressants or antipsychotics, that just mask the symptoms. They don't actually treat the problem. Or in the medical industry where, oh, you're in pain, here, let's give you some painkillers. Let's give you some opiates. That'll keep you as a repeat customer. I mean, what better way to have a repeat customers than to have them addicted to your product? And something that I've talked about for a very long time in my practice is identifying the source of where the problem's coming from. So is it a physical issue? Especially in mental health, is it a physical deficiency? Mm-hmm. Are you deficient of magnesium, vitamin D, B12? Do you have some sort of hormonal imbalance happening? Is it a toxin issue? So can we resolve that? If it's, you're just deficient in magnesium, instead of going through all this other stuff, well, just take magnesium. That simple. Is it in the mental body? Did you experience trauma and are holding on to really heavy emotions, or just can't wrap your head around something? Or is it in the energy body? Is it an energy block? So once you get your energy system flowing correctly, well, the problem might once it's resolved, that resolution may manifest into the other bodies and just fix itself. So once you fix the energetic body, the physical body will start to realign itself, and then the mental body will start to flow properly. So the biggest thing that I've noticed is properly diagnosing the actual origin of the condition, not just treating the symptoms. And a lot of times that, the symptoms are the most obvious whack-a-mole. So that mole pops up, let's whack it. But where is that mole coming from? What's causing that mole to pop up? So that's a lot of what we're talking about and where we're going with this webcast today.
Yeah. And I mean, so you were talking about how in like the mainstream and in big pharma and, in the medical field, they're really all about the pharmaceuticals. And one of the biggest misconceptions I found is that as I was in my training, learning how to be a mental health therapist, I thought, well, no, we're not training people to go on medication. We're not facilitating that. We're giving them alternatives. What I didn't realize at the time was that the alternatives were really just giving them ways of locking, whatever it was that was bothering them, away and storing it in their subconscious to do nothing with. Like we would teach people to, just take that memory and just let it float, put it in a box and let it float down the stream, or put it up on a shelf and you can deal with it later. But we would never actually teach them how to deal with that. And so really we weren't facilitating healing, we were facilitating coping. And those two things are very, very different, right? To teach someone how to manage, dealing with symptoms all the time that are never going to resolve themselves is completely different than helping people heal so that they never have to deal with that again because it's not an issue anymore. And so that's one of those nuances that I really had no idea about until I actually left mental health and went over to NLP and spiritual development and all those other things that led us to meet.
Yeah, that's very true. When I got injured and completely disabled in the Marine Corps, I could barely walk. I was struggling. Bills were piling up. I was just really stressed. And pretty much the only service they offer military veterans, they didn't offer to help me physically with my condition. They didn't offer to send me to a doctor. They didn't offer me any financial assistance. But all these programs out there that, oh, we help the veterans, they always ask, do you need counseling? Well, that's not going to help with my physical back injury. But the one time I did, I'm like, okay, I'm really stressed. I've never been to a counselor before. So, okay, sure, I'll go to counseling. So I went and told them what was going on, what I stressed about, that the back injury was impacting my life, that the Marine Corps was not assisting me, went through all these different things. And then I went back for the second session. And he's like, okay, you talked about your back injury, then you rambled on, and then you talked about this. So, how do you feel about being stressed? I'm like, wait a second, it was just totally parroting what I said to him and going, oh, that's just, let go of it, or like gave me no actual real tools to deal with any of this stress. And I'm like, the mental health industry is broken. It needs to be overhauled. and then going through the spiritual and energetic healing, and then circling back around to the mental aspects through hypnosis, NLP, a lot of subconscious work, I now see the value of the tools of NLP, hypnosis, and other things that deal with the subconscious mind.
Yes. So to my knowledge, and I'm not saying that I know everything because, we all have more to learn, but to my knowledge, there are only 2 actual techniques that are used in mental health treatment that can possibly help with those more subconscious underlying mental health or mental things, right? And those 2 things are exposure therapy, which is rough and difficult and not always effective, and something called EMDR. Are you familiar with EMDR, Brian?
I've heard of it, but I've not really worked with it before. I've heard of a couple of people that have had pretty positive results with it.
Yeah. So EMDR, which is an acronym for eye movement desensitization. I can never remember the R. Realization, I think. Anyway, so EMDR is a technique that actually works very similarly to one of our NLP techniques. And it is very effective. What it actually does is it uses movement to help rewire the part of your brain that is responsible for storing memory with the parts of your brain that controls your emotions. So when you go through this technique, it helps to separate the emotion from the triggering event, and it can be very useful. The problem with that is that, number one, it is very, very difficult to find somebody that is able to do that. It takes a very significant amount of training and certification to be able to have this, to find a mental health practitioner who has the skills and the certification that can actually facilitate that. The other big problem with that is that it takes a lot of sessions spread out. So the NLP tool that we use that works very similar to that takes maybe one or 2 sessions, and then it's like, oh, you're good. Whereas EMDR, because of the way that it's facilitated, it takes much more focus, and it is a lot of it more intense for the person who is on the patient side. And so it takes a lot more sessions and it's spread out, and that's sometimes really difficult to go through.
Yeah, the client I was working with that was going through that described that process, that it was taking he was seeing a very positive improvement, but it was taking a lot of sessions, and he did not have the finances to be able to continue on with the regularity that really he needed to see a massive change with that.
Yeah, and that's another good point too, is that EMDR is very rarely ever covered by insurance, very, very rarely, and usually with a higher copay. And because it takes so many more sessions than, the NLP tools that we use, you probably would be paying significantly more for that, unless you're fortunate enough to find a therapist who is working towards certification and willing to share those skills in order to get the experience. But then you take the risk of, does this person even really know what they're doing because they're still in training?
Yeah, that's very true. And I don't want to discount anybody, but some people have a natural knack for it. So I've seen some beginners pick up on techniques and just run with it because they're listening to their intuition. But sometimes, especially someone that's really deep into mental illness, to be going with something, well, let me read the manual as we're going through this. So that's you could get a budget or a deal on getting those treatments, but it's a shame that insurance won't pay for something that actually works to cure the problem or fix the problem, instead of just mitigating the symptoms of that.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that really insurance will let you just keep going back to therapy as much as you want. Just keep going. Yeah, sure, we'll pay for it. Just keep going. Spend hours and all, year long working on these problems and never getting anywhere. Like, but we could also, turn this into a conversation. I don't know if you really want to, but we could, about how the insurance company isn't really asking for you to heal. That's not really part of their agenda.
Everybody makes money. It's about the left hand paying the right hand and then swapping it back. Unfortunately, I really feel I have a whole list of demands that I would like to make. And one of them is to eliminate for-profit health, because the patient is not, and I don't want it to be like a government sponsored, oh, you get one doctor visit per year. And if you're over age 65, you don't get the treatment you need because you're just on your way out anyhow. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, any sort of governmental 1984 type stuff. What I'm talking about is a whole revamping of the health industry. Instead of addiction programs, think about all these addiction rehab facilities. Well, if you go down to other countries, especially in South America, Central America, people that are, dangerously addicted to opiates, methamphetamine, cocaine, even down to caffeine and nicotine, they treat them. Well, I mean, they don't treat people with caffeine or nicotine addiction, but the treatment they use is the ibogaine treatment in Chipsa Hospital in Tijuana and many other places. I believe it's even legal in Canada. The Chipsa Hospital has a 95% success rate in curing addiction over a 15-year study. Why is it illegal here? Because that would get rid of repeat customers. If you are no longer addicted to opiates, you're no longer, a reliable customer at the pharmacy. But it works. It really works. It cures addiction, and they don't want to cure conditions. So we could end the opiate crisis right now if if we legalized iboga. Even sacred mushrooms, the psilocybe genus of mushrooms, in clinical smoking trials, they had an 80% success rate in curing smoking in 2 sessions with these psilocybe mushrooms. So a lot of the traditional medicine that's been used for thousands of years, and not even just the plants and the herbs, the techniques that have been passed down over the years, by these so-called witch doctors and all, this, but they're techniques that have been developed over thousands of years by traditional medicine people that have been handed down and passed on because they work. So NLP is very similar to a lot of the shamanic techniques that I've used and worked with and learned all over the planet. So if we can overhaul the whole medical system, we could change the way the world works. And even so, if we apply the addiction and curing the addiction with the iboga or ibogaine, well, you know what? I bet we could also overhaul the criminal justice system, the penal system, the reformation system. So instead of throwing a soft criminal in the lockup for years and years and sending them to criminal university, and they come out from a soft criminal who maybe had a bag of weed on them, to now all of a sudden they can't get a job. So, they take the skill set that they learned in the lockup and become a professional criminal and a bigger drain on society. What if we just take them, okay, what's the problem here? You had a bag of weed. Why are we even prosecuting people for that anymore? That just makes no sense. But okay.
I think we're moving in the right direction with that, though. Like, more and more states are backing off and saying, okay, so we don't really care if you have a little bit of weed on you.
Yeah. I mean, we are moving in a very proper direction. But I'm talking more about the violent crime. Hurt people hurt people. So why did they do the crime that they commit? Did they not have a better coping skill set? Were they, dealing with the trauma that happened? Did they, so for the most part, the people I encounter are pretty good people. Yeah, they might be hurt, and then hurt people hurt people. So if we can, okay, you hurt other people. So instead of locking them away in a very draconian, old-fashioned way, and it doesn't do anything for their mental health. And in fact, it really harms their mental health and creates them to be more hurt. Okay, I'll get your comments up in just a second. What we should do is put them through an intensive psychedelic retreat using iboga, LSD therapy, MDMA therapy. And, it doesn't have to be like some shaman out in the jungle. It can be in a very nice clinical setting where instead of a rehab facility, you have a psychedelic reformation center. So yeah, okay, they're dangerous criminals. Let's maybe keep them locked up, confined, or something like that, but give them a little bit better environment and then take them through these different sessions. Have a very intensive, basically healing retreat for them, and then reevaluate them at the end of that period, maybe a month, maybe a year. And at the end, they'll be a completely different person. So can we forgive them as a society for being hurt and hurting other people? That's a big question. I know a lot of people hold the grudge, oh, that person hurt me, they need to be punished. But what if we get rid of Hammurabi's code, an eye for an eye? What if we get rid of that and go, okay, hurt people hurt people. Can we forgive those people?
Because all people hurt at some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they obviously didn't have the coping skills to be able to function in society in any sort of positive way. So what if we could kind of go in and heal their psyche through psychedelic rehab? It got shut down in the 60s, but it was very promising. With the last watch in government, it was now legalized again. So can we do this? Can we change society as a whole? Can we change the medical system? Can we change the reformation system? Can we as a society forgive those hurt people who hurt people and move forward and look for a positive society? Really quick, I will get to John's comments here. So addictions come in many forms, and he's true. That's very true. It's not just, drugs. It's not just, it can be sex. It can be violence. It can be, and a lot of the media has
it could be
been.
Exercise.
What's that?
It could be exercise. It could be food.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
What's causing the addiction, and oftentimes it's programming through media. A lot of, especially rap music, uses isochronic tones, so that low beats they have going just zones people out, and oftentimes those are used with drug use. I don't even call them sacred plants at that point in time, because when you combine drugs and alcohol, they're no longer sacred plants, they're just drugs. That makes them very susceptible to programming. And then you have all this bad programming coming through rap and pop music, pushing really not good beliefs on people. So that causes a lot of the addictions. How many people are addicted to anger? How many people are addicted to conflict? So, okay. Some
drama.
Are even addicted to drama. Yeah, that's very, very true.
Yes.
And that also has to do with the narcissistic cycle of abuse, getting sucked into that. And it creates, rewires the brain when you're abused. And then, it comes back. And then when it gets worse, and then, so that whole cycle can suck someone in. So very true.
Narcissism, though, Brian. Sometimes it's other forms of trauma. Trauma in general, once you've experienced something like that, if you have not resolved it properly, you will continue to reenact your own trauma. And so sometimes that comes through as, bringing drama into your life, or bringing abusers into your life, or bringing whatever it is back into your life until you're able to resolve it.
That's very true. And one of the things I've noticed is, when you're functioning from ego, the ego knows this. So, it knows all the parameters which you're in right now. So it's afraid of change. So if all of a sudden you go, well, over there is potentially better, but I don't know the parameters. I know the parameters here. So I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay in this situation and not move. So if you stay in that egoic fear and not push the ego out of the way and go, you know what, I'm going to, no matter how scary it is, choose something better, you can keep repeating the cycle. So if you grew up in an abusive household or an abusive situation, and you've gotten used to that, your ego says, okay, just stay here. I know how to keep you safe. even though you're not safe, there's that illusion of safety in the familiarity.
Right. The known
So,
is always less scary than the unknown.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of people cling to what they know because of ego. So it's stepping beyond that ego that can cause that. There are so many lies in this world that you are mentioning. Pharmaceuticals, absolutely.
There's so much money in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Like there's so much money. If you follow the money, there's so much money that pharmaceutical companies dump into governments to legalize things that should never be legalized. And that's probably the scariest part.
Well, look at how many of the uh, pharmaceutical industries, Bayer and Monsanto, how many of them were on the FDA and back and forth, and the CEOs, on the companies get a position in the government or the government position. Once they leave their government post, they then go to work at these corporations, and the corruption is just absolute. So it's
But even
really bad.
beyond that, the companies literally fund politicians' campaigns.
Oh, absolutely. They're bought
So
and
if
paid for.
they're sending these politicians all these campaigns, of course the politicians are going to vote however it's going to benefit the people that are paying for them.
And the politicians are so corrupt now that they even admit to it. There's videos of them going, well, I'll be more open to, their ideas, since they gave me money. Like, that's open. There's recording. There's videos of politicians talking about that. It's just insane.
Agreed.
So, okay. Mental health is directly impacted by our lies we are surrounded by. Yeah. So many people are trying to reach for what consumerism pushes, and they have this idea that if you can't have a house with a white picket fence and 2.5 kids and a dog and a cat, well, you're not living up to your potential. So, yeah, if you're not living up to your potential, you feel like a failure, and then that creates a sense of depression. Or if you can't buy the new phone every year, or you don't have a new flat screen TV, they use this insidious trick and trap and guilt and manipulation in marketing to get people to buy, and then those lies, that manipulation, causes a lot of the mental health that we're experiencing.
Agreed. Also, this is why it is so important to purposefully reprogram your subconscious. Like there are, you can make your own subliminal audios that you can listen to. You can even sleep to them. That's been immensely helpful for me. You can purposefully, pick out music that really helps you, or choose to turn off the TV so that you don't have all that nonsense blabbing on in the background while you're doing whatever you're doing. You can choose to add things in or take things out so that you are purposefully absorbing the things that will benefit you as opposed to the things that are probably not the best for you. And that's something that takes practice. And it's something that, takes time to figure out, like, what's going to make you feel your best and what's going to make you feel most confident and what's going to make you feel really crappy that you probably don't want in your environment. But once you actually start unlocking these keys that are really helpful for you, it's like, I don't know, like exponential growth happens so quickly, and you start to feel really amazing very quickly because you have changed all of those environmental things.
That's very true. I do. Sometimes I even forget about that because I don't watch TV. I very rarely watch anything produced commercially, or TVs, movies. I've even really, it's rare that I watch anything that Hollywood casts, and it's really the Hollywood, the wand, they cast. Like this. This is a webcast. We're casting our words, which we make with spelling. It's all out in plain sight. Turn into your nightly programming. Literally out in the open, they're talking about programming you. Commercials are shameless hypnosis now. So if you can turn that noise off, that's just cluttering up your mind, cluttering up your subconscious mind, cluttering up your psyche, just turn that off. And you'll be so much more relaxed. The people on the islands that live out in the jungles of Puna, or it's just such a more relaxed, chill lifestyle because they don't have that TV hyping them up, pushing them for more, pushing them. You need to buy, and that's all the programming is to drive consumerism. So if you turn that off, all of a sudden, you'll chill. So instead of coming home and, feeling lonely, let me just turn something on to distract me. I'll turn the TV on and, have a cup of wine or something, which then makes you more susceptible for programming. Or after work, I just want to chill. I'm going to have a beer and kick back and watch, a game or something like that. You're opening yourself up to programming. The alcohol is called spirits for a reason. It leaves you, especially when you get blackout drunk, it leaves you open for attachment and makes you very easy to program. So when you combine the electronic heroin called a TV with alcohol, it becomes very, very effective at programming and brainwashing. That's what MK Ultra, that experimental project showed, and then it went into Project Monarch, which is the functional project of them actually developing music industry for hypnosis purposes, movies, and all that. The defense industry spends a lot of money on Hollywood movies.
I feel like we need to mention social media here as well, because
absolutely.
I don't know about you, but I know pretty much like everyone that I know that has a social media account, doesn't matter what it is, can get on social media and start scrolling. And before they know it, hours have gone by. And the reason why that happens is because you're actually putting yourself in trance in a, I think it's a theta brainwave. Is that right? Theta, I think?
There's different ones, but theta is a meditative state. Yeah.
Yes, it is a meditative state. You're putting yourself into a meditative state. You're putting yourself into a subconscious state while you're scrolling. And we all know that every social media platform out there has ads. Whether you're looking at them or not is irrelevant, because if you're already putting yourself in a subconscious state, it is getting through to your subconscious. So that's something to be aware of as well. Even if you're like, well, I don't listen to music and I don't watch TV, really need to be aware of what you're doing on social media as well. And if you are one of those people who starts scrolling and loses track of like hours of your day, then that's something that is definitely affecting you, because they all have ads, and all of the ads are geared towards the things that you're searching for on search engines, the things that you're talking about in conversation. Brian sent me a link for to get on the webcast today. I had never done anything with StreamYard. I've never Googled StreamYard before, but as soon as he sent me that link, I got on Instagram or Facebook, one of the two, and was scrolling, and I found an ad for StreamYard. So even things like that, they're definitely coming. Like everything in your phone is connected. Everything is talking to everything else. And if you're scrolling and losing track of time, you are in trance and you are taking that in.
Yeah, Edward Snowden warned us about this a long time ago. They're watching everything we do. I've then talked with very high-ranking military members, and they all said, like, you cannot have all your information on any electronic device is monitored. So your conversations on Facebook are monitored. Your Google Home or Amazon Alexa or any of those devices are constantly listening to you. They are building a database of your psyche. They understand you better than you could ever imagine. I even placed an ad for my new photography shop on Etsy through Fiverr. Completely unrelated platform to Facebook. Facebook all of a sudden starts serving me up ads for marketing companies. I mean, it's really insidious what's going on. Mm-hmm. And yes, you do get put into trance. They actually have an energy field that comes out from most screens that puts people in a hypnagogic trance. Either the flicker rate of the screen or the energy being projected out will put people into a trance state. And they know that. It's proven that kids are easily addicted to technology. it's not some far out there oddball conspiracy. There's patents that talk about the energy being emitted from the screens being hypnagogic. There's just so much proof out there. It's actually being recognized, and people are starting to get diagnosed for electronic device dependency. I was working with a 4-year-old, and when the tablet batteries would run out or something and he couldn't watch his movie, he would literally go into physical withdrawal. He would get the DT, he would start shaking, he would start drooling, he would just like totally lose control. That's a physical dependency. That's a physical addiction to technology. So yeah, he's not consuming any sort of physical drugs. However, that electronic heroin that he was on, as soon as the batteries ran out, well, he would go into withdrawal. It's very similar with road hypnosis. So as you're going down the road and you get white stripe, white stripe, white stripe, white stripe, that can put people into a trance state. And then all of a sudden they kind of come back to, and they're like, whoa, I don't remember any of that drive. Well, when you start getting on Facebook or any of those and scrolling, and it just, you're gone. And there's so many pattern interrupts, like a video that shocks you, or something that's interesting and it pulls you in, and all of a sudden you have so many pattern interrupts, you forget everything, and you're deep inside a state of somnambulism or a hypnagogic state, and then you're just directly consuming all of that content into your subconscious mind. There's a thing called photo reading where people can just flip through a book and they can absorb that information because the subconscious mind is actually directly absorbing it, not the conscious mind. So it bypasses the conscious mind, just gets sucked into the subconscious mind. So oftentimes that's what's happening when people get on a social media platform, and all those ads that you're not even consciously looking at or paying attention to, you're absorbing them. So when you see them enough times, they become familiar. So then all of a sudden you'll click on that ad and purchase. Very insidious.
Or you'll be thinking of some goal you have, or something that you're trying to work towards. Like Brian, you're looking for marketing, and you go, I know who I should contact. Those people. Why? Because you've seen those ads 18,000 times, whether you've actually looked at them or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So all of that is just to say, yes, we're surrounded. There's absolutely no way of getting away from all of it unless you literally put yourself in a bubble on a desert island somewhere. So all the more reason to just limit what you can, and know that, obviously there's going to be programming. We don't live in isolation. We are creatures of, a social habit, because that's just how we are made. But you just do what you can to empower yourself with the tools that you have. That's the only way that you can possibly get past it.
Or just unplug. It doesn't have to be a desert island. It can be like a beautiful tropical island like Hawaii, and just join an off-grid community, or even just get off social media. If you want to talk to someone, text them. You don't have to be on Facebook. You don't have to be on Instagram. If you want to see someone's pictures, they can send them to you. If you want updates in their life, you can, wow, kind of crazy concept, but you could have a conversation with them. You could have a physical visit with those people and catch up like real humans, not electronic robots anymore.
So you absolutely can, but I mean, look at where this webcast is being cast, Brian.
Well, yeah.
People go into social media, and people go to YouTube, and people go to search engines to find information. Sure, you can get it, the old-fashioned way, but this is so much faster, and this is the way that we're accustomed to, because that's the way our society is run. So yes, you could unplug and completely detach and, just go and live your best life, but not everyone's quite ready for that.
Yeah. I realize there's different levels of that. It doesn't have to be, yes or no, black or white. There's many different levels. So instead of going, sitting down and I'm going to scroll through that, you know what, if I need a social interaction, hey, why don't I just call my friend? Or instead of, sitting down and wasting time on this, hey, let's go for a coffee, or let's catch up or something, instead of, do it the old ways. Think of back in the 90s. We didn't have any of this, yet we had active social lives. We didn't even really have cell phones in the early 90s that were used for social interaction. Oftentimes they're just for emergency use or business use. So we got along fine without the technology, and people forget that. People have become so hopelessly dependent on it. So even if you do have a Facebook, don't sit down and scroll. Don't just go through in numerous amount of Instagram profiles or their feed or whatever Instagram's called. I'm not that big on Instagram or understand that well, but what would it look like if you entertained yourself without electronics? And I'm not saying you have to go back into the Stone Age, but what if you could reduce your usage or amount that you have?
Yeah, setting time limits for yourself is a really easy way of managing that. Or if you're going on, I'm on social media frequently, but it's because I am using it as a tool to, reach out to people. So when I go on my social media, I go on with an intention in mind. What is it that I'm here to accomplish right now? Or if you just go on there for entertainment purposes or to look up information, okay, you can either have, I'm going to look up this information as your intention, or I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to scroll, see what everybody's up to, and then I'm off and doing what I need to do. And sometimes that means setting a physical timer. You could set it on your phone, or you could have an actual timer. But either way, giving yourself that external reminder, hey, you need to get off here. You've spent enough time. That's enough to help break it up so that it's not so much at once.
Absolutely. Because it's so easy to get lost on Facebook or YouTube. How many videos lead into the next video, lead into the next video, then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I lost a whole afternoon or a whole evening got sucked into YouTube. So it's being more conscious about how you use electronics and that. Yeah. So John sent another one. Money is the biggest lie. How many people wait to live their life because they're like, oh, when I have a little bit more money saved up, oh, I'm going to wait for this. I'm going to wait for that. Or I don't have enough money to do this. I don't have enough money to do that. And people are so stuck in the prison of their mind due to the money magic system. And it's used as a control. Think about how willing people are to prostitute themselves out just for $1. And I'm not talking about sexual prostitution. I'm talking about whatever, whoring yourself out for, $1. Okay, I'm going to do this terrible job, which is absolutely soul sucking and I hate, but I need to make ends meet. Well, what if you could eliminate some of your expenses? What if you could redesign your life to minimize cash burn? What if you could find something that you really love doing and have that bring you abundance instead of I need to do this for money, instead of going, okay, I'm going to follow my passions. And then all of a sudden abundance starts flowing, getting paid for or getting abundance flowing to you for being instead of doing. It's a whole different concept.
It is. We could do a whole series on this topic of wealth and money and lack mindset and all of the things, because there's so many lies. There's so many avenues that society has fed us stating that, money is this way. And most of us have received that programming. So most of us are coming from that position and having to completely rewire everything. So yeah, we could go really deep on that, but we don't have enough time just today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a next episode we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I discovered through deep meditation, I started tapping into, okay, what is this money magic system of control? And it's not just the people lusting for money. It's the people rejecting money as well, because money's dirty, money's evil. So they're just as controlled by money as the people that are lusting after it. It's really insidious and has a lot of people stuck in the prison in their mind.
There's the guilt factor too. There's people who don't want to take away from other people and not realizing that money is limitless. Yeah. It's digital. It's made up.
It really is. For every
That's a whole
dollar,
different thing.
the fractional reserve system, for every dollar a bank takes in, they can loan out $100. Then they get those $100 back. They can loan out $1,000. And all of a sudden that $1 becomes trillions and trillions of dollars. And there's nothing in the pot. It's all made up. There is no gold backing it. It's a fiat currency. It's worth something because the people with guns behind that money say it is worth something. That's it. And they keep printing out more and more and more. However, if you were to counterfeit, you would get thrown away for a long time. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're devaluing the money. Say, a decade ago, you had $100,000 in the bank account. In today's money, it is not worth the same value. So if you had $100,000 worth of gold sitting in your bank account, now all of a sudden today, that would be worth way, way more dollar value because the dollar is worth so much less. We're really facing hyperinflation, just like Germany right before World War II.
Well, even inflation aside, though, the way that the global economic system is set up, people's value isn't necessarily about what they have. It's about what they're giving. So you can literally create value, and that's an exponential amount that you can create. Wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of like, if you're creating value that you're taking money from someone else. No, they can create their own value too. And if we're all just creating, then that amount of money that was possible before is now exponentially more.
Yeah. And, we can step outside of money. What is money? Money is used as an exchange. It's like money is just energy, really. So
Exactly.
if we can create more out of it, if we do more service, we share more energy, well, that doesn't actually require money to happen. If we can make things, build things, that doesn't actually require money to make it happen. It requires energy. So at some point in time, we just have to go, well, what could a new system look like? And I mean, not this is stuff we should really save for the financial episode, but just a quick, what if half your money wasn't stolen through taxes? Really, about half of it, when you look at all the licenses, fees, registrations, income tax, this tax, sales tax, licenses, car, licenses, registrations, fishing licenses, dog licenses. Think about all that money paid to the government. That is stolen out. So if about half of your income, so instead of having to work 40 hours just to barely make your ends meet, all of a sudden you'd be further ahead working 20 hours. And then what if we had free energy like Tesla had over 100 years ago? So instead of having to pay for electricity, heating, gas, all this and that would eliminate a lot of costs there. How much of the percentage of your income would you keep if you didn't have to pay for electricity or heating or cooking or any of those other utilities? What if your car ran on free energy? All of a sudden, well, guess what? You would need very little money. And also, if the commodities trading was banned, I am hugely advocating for the ban of commodities trading. Why? It does nothing for the end user. It bids up the cost of living completely unnecessarily. So the fat cats are getting rich on commodities trading, while the people who need those commodities to live in a day-to-day life are getting screwed. So this is a whole giant list of demands that we're going to talk about. But to see a new golden age, some of this stuff is going to have to get changed.
Agreed. Lots of things are going to have to get changed. That could be another whole series in and of itself, Brian, is all the things that need to get changed.
Yeah.
We could go into the education system. We could go into the prison, the criminal justice system.
Yeah, the legal system. So
everything.
We got a comment here.
A whole new overhaul. Go ahead.
I am in the process of a legal mediation with regards to mental health. And during a prep meeting, he was telling me how to dress, where to place myself, blank wall, talk about programming. I'm working through low vibrational frequency, all the lies of this world. Um, yes, I mean, that is programming to a way, but it's also the way people perceive you. I don't want to say that, not to judge a book by the cover, but sometimes, well, the cover has the title and sometimes a summary on it. So if you look at someone and they can't physically take care of themselves, they're ungroomed, they're unkempt, their clothes are dirty, filthy, full of rags. And I'm not saying you have to go out and wear designer clothes. You can wear, or it's possible to wear clothes from a secondhand store, wash them up, and they look really nice. You don't have to wear designer brands to look nice. However, one of the greatest things the Marine Corps taught me was military presence and bearing. So how can you conduct yourself to look professional? How can you dress yourself to look professional? So then people perceive you as professional. Someone that has their act together and, if the cover of the book doesn't have a good title on it, people aren't going to want to listen to it. So especially in the court of law, you're getting other people's opinions and your fate hangs on there. So I can kind of understand why. But I also understand, like, wait a second, they're trying to program you to go through the system as a robot of the system. So, I can see both sides of that, definitely.
I feel like it's a fine line because I feel like on some areas, like people, well, hold on, let me back up one step. Okay, so there is a real problem in mental health regarding objectivity. It's a real issue. So people go into therapy and they think, okay, I'm seeing a therapist. They're an expert in what they do. That's how they're able to counsel people. They're going to help me, and that every therapist is exactly the same. And that is absolutely not true. It's not true at all. And it is one of the biggest things that people, if you are going to go into that kind of a service, like if you're going to go out and seek a mental health therapist, you need to be aware of right off the bat is that not every mental health therapist is the same. There's all kinds of different trainings. There's all kinds of different certifications. You can have one of a number of different kinds of degrees to be able to go into that kind of work. But the biggest thing that determines how that is going to play out for you is their individual personality, which is not something that's often acknowledged. Because at the end of the day, every single person who is a therapist is a person first. They have their own likes, they have their own dislikes, they have their own pet peeves, they have their own subliminal programming, they have their own value systems, they have their own everything. They are an individual first. And so if you go into therapy with a therapist who just doesn't match up with your values, doesn't match up with your personality, you just clash. Number one, if they're working for any kind of an agency, they cannot ask to give you to someone else. You would have to ask for a different therapist because professionally, that's not a thing. But even if it goes like all wrong, they will still say, oh, it was just unsuccessful treatment. They'll never, ever acknowledge the fact that it was just, that you didn't match up. So that's a big issue, is objectivity. But beyond that, Brian, there was something else that you said. Oh, you were talking about how there's the two sides of the coin. There's the, ability to present yourself in a professional manner versus the desire and need to be able to be who you are in front of other people. And I feel like that's a really fine line to walk, because every single person on this planet is here to learn. Well, I feel like most of us are here to learn how to be ourselves and what that even means. We're all a little different. We're all, we're all mirrors to each other, yes, but we're also all a little different piece of that pie. And we're here to be acknowledged as a different piece of the pie. None of us are the same at all. And so when someone is telling you, yes, you need to be just like this, and this is the only way you can be accepted, it can also be damaging. However, yes, if you have to go into court and your main presence is to be dropping F-bombs all over the place, or dressing like a slob, or maybe you don't like to brush your hair, or maybe whatever it is, and you go into court that way, they're not going to take you seriously. So I feel like part of it is learning how to play these roles in settings where you have to, and also learning how to find the environment where you can express yourself in the way that suits you.
Absolutely. That's a very fine line to walk.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from the military programming, and okay, here's what it means to look professional. Okay, well, how can I stay within the guidelines of looking acceptable and presentable and having people listen to me and trust me, but being able to fully express myself? Where is it okay to go against the grain, yet at the same time still be accepted? That's a very fine line to walk, and it's something that you just have to find for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is, like, I don't know. Everybody has to find their own path in life, and if you want to try and be cookie cutter and put a mask on, this even has to do with the class Becoming Magnetic. This is what a co-creationship. That class is going to be really cool. It's going to be about becoming magnetic to attract the correct partner. So if you're putting a mask on and being basic and trying to pretend like you're just like everybody else, well, you're going to attract someone who's attracted to the mask you're wearing. Then all of a sudden, when you take your mask off, they're not going to like you. So there's that. Yeah. So, the next comment she left was, lawyers and judges do not have our best interest speaking from personal experience. And I completely agree. They're there to make money for the system. It's no longer to keep justice in society. It's really keeping the robots, keeping control. Like the Andy Griffith is gone. That sheriff that's there to keep law and order and protect and serve. Now we're getting harassed by law enforcement and getting tickets for going a few miles an hour over the speed limit, and there's speed traps, and it's really, it's a different society. It's all corporate now. It's all about making money, and it's very frustrating.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and just say that I happen to know personally that there are people who fall on both sides of that in every setting possible. There are holistic practitioners that have no idea what they're doing. There are judges and police officers and lawyers and medical doctors who are very open and care very deeply about what they do, and they try to do it in the most objective, loving way possible. And there's the flip side of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, so stereotypes exist for a reason, yet at the same time, everybody's individual. Mm-hmm. So you can't judge an individual. You can see a trend. So doctors have the trend of prescribing pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. Yet there may be some doctors that are fervently against it and want people to work on a holistic method instead. There are holistic practitioners that really don't know what they're doing. I've encountered a couple along the way, and so there is no hard, fast, and steady. No. Generalizations and stereotypes don't always hold up because there are individuals and everybody is different.
Under every single label in this universe that you could possibly put on a person, whether that's a job title or a specific kind of training or something that they did or some sort of diagnosis, every single label out there that you could put in a person, under each of those labels, under any of those labels, there is a person. There is an individual. So just be aware of that when you're out in your travels and when you're encountering different people, that, yeah, sure, we can label people, we can put them in boxes, we can try to know them before we even know them, but every single person is a person.
Absolutely. And through my travels, I found that everybody has a different thought form. So the people in Australia, their culture looks very similar from the outside, but when you get in there, people in Australia actually have a different thought form. You can be saying the same things, but you just won't meet up. You can be using the same words and they don't even mean the same thing. So the thought forms in Australia are very different than the thought forms in the United States. The thought forms in Mexico are very different than the thought forms in the United States. So as you travel the world, people think differently, and that's okay. It's actually really cool to experience. I highly suggest everybody travels and broadens your perspective and sees, open up your horizons.
And that doesn't mean that you'll like everyone that you meet either. But yeah.
So John said Andy Griffiths is gone, and now we have a bunch of Barney Fifes. Yeah, I wouldn't say you're wrong, but we'll just say everybody's an individual.
Yeah,
but possibly. I'm kind of getting behind on these comments. We're getting a lot of great comments here.
That's great.
Universal law attraction, love attracts love. And that's really where you put energy and thought form. When you combine thought and energy and you put it into motion, that's what creates motion in our life. So if we're focusing on the negative, yeah, we're going to bring a lot of negative into our life. If we're focusing on being loving and caring, we're going to bring more of that into our life.
I'm going to caveat that with that could show up differently depending on what you're putting your energy into. So love is like this really broad term. And I think she was referencing like you were talking about your class. So I think she was referencing like attracting like your person that you want in your life. And where a lot of people get stuck is that they are putting out there this intention of what they think they want in love, but maybe it's not really what they actually want in love. And that's something that you can only get through experience and gaining more clarity and then, redefining what it is that love looks like for you. Because at the end of the day, love is an energy, and in your body, it's a biochemical thing that happens. Like, it's not a one size fits all thing.
Yeah. That's so big. That's something I'm going to get into in the becoming magnetic class is, there's what we think we want and then what we're actually attracted to. So a lot of women will want this very sensitive guy who's a great listener and, can do all these feminine traits, but what those traits usually end up being is in usually a gay man or another woman would be pretty much anybody that fits their whatever. So they all have boyfriends. But what they're primarily attracted to are signs of an alpha male. Does he look like he can provide? Does he look like he can protect? Does he look like he has good genetics? So what they want and what they're actually attracted to are very different. So unless you can do like a parts integration and go, okay, here's what I'm attracted to here, but here's what I want. How can I combine those into one thing and go, okay, logically here, let's do parts integration, combine those, and all of a sudden that will magnetically draw your perfect person to you. So it's a lot of introspection and figuring out, okay, you think you want this, but what are you really attracted to? So then once you can fully conceptualize and understand what you want, but what you're attracted to, then that's when you can start working on reconciling those and figuring out a path of how to get where you want to go.
Right. Well, and also sometimes what you think you want that because you think that that's the solution for other problems that you've had in the past or for other problems that you've observed through your upbringing. Like you and I, Brian, both come from some pretty heavy dysfunction. And I know neither of us really wanted to have the kind of relationship, not with each other, obviously, but the kind of relationship romantically with like similar to what our parents had. You don't want to mimic what your parents have. I don't want to mimic what my parents have. My parents were divorced within a few years, So like when you have those kinds of examples, sometimes you put ideas in your head as this is the kind of relationship I want in order to avoid that problem. because you think that that's the only solution to that problem. And then it turns out that when you try to implement what you thought you wanted, it really isn't the solution, or it isn't a solution that you like. So sometimes you just kind of have to play around and get clear, lots of experience and clarity to figure out what it is you actually want.
That's very true. And is it an away from conflict or a to conflict? So are you running away from something? So I don't want that pain in my life, so I'm going to run to what looks to be the opposite. Or is it I want that and I'm running to that? That's actually something interesting I noticed a lot in my travels. There are people that would go into really dark places or become straight up Satanists because they're running away from things that they did not like about a certain faith. So then they ran to the opposite faith, which isn't really a solution. It's not running, okay, what do I want in my life? I'm running away from what I don't want. So instead of running away from something, figure out what you actually want and work towards moving towards that.
Yeah. How are we doing with those comments?
Oh, we're like way behind. This is
I feel like
awesome.
we're taking a huge detour from mental health, but that's okay. These are all really good questions.
While we live in this world of lies, we begin to realize why we are having mental health issues. Okay, we're getting back to mental health. That's a good thing.
Good.
We are not liars. We must return to the truth, living truth and speaking truth. We must be aware of those who continue to lie. They propagate all our mental illnesses. It is up to each of us to discover truth and live from the heart.
Absolutely.
So even if you are hurt, you don't have to choose to be the victim. You can be in pain, but you don't have to choose to suffer. So that's very true. What
and
are you
that
going
is
to do
why
about
there
it?
are so many life coaches in existence. So
Yeah.
many people have said, you know what, I come from this pain. I can help other people who are experiencing this pain, and therefore I will help raise the vibration of the world, whether they realize that's what they're doing or not. That is why there are so many life coaches. And that is why we do what we do, right, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. And the 100th monkey syndrome. So are you familiar with the 100th monkey
I
syndrome?
am not.
Oh, okay. Well, they are watching monkeys on an island. And the monkeys figured out that by washing like maybe one or two figured it out, and by washing the yams or sweet potatoes, they would taste better, and they weren't covered with mud, and they just enjoyed the experience more. So then once a few of them learned to do that, more of them started learning to do that, and they started learning it from each other. And then when about 100 monkeys on that island figured out to do that, all of a sudden monkeys on islands separated with no contact between that group of monkeys and the other group of monkeys. The other monkeys on the other island started doing that. So there are mental networks that we don't talk about, and that's why some of the new frequencies out are so dangerous, because they're moving into frequencies that our brain uses. So it can actually influence thought. Not going to hit any of the buzzwords right now, but it is something to think about. And we have a collective consciousness, a network of brains or consciousness all around the planet. So as more and more people raise their vibration and heal, that then goes out into the collective consciousness and starts to really have a massive impact on changing the world.
Absolutely.
And perfect, crazy, wild, and free changes in our world.
Yes, it does.
So, any more comments before we go down this rabbit hole of getting lost in comments? Was there any other mental health topics that you really wanted to address before we get too distracted and run out of time?
I don't think so. I mean, we covered all the big things, the diagnoses and treatments, and the only thing I didn't mention was we could go down the rabbit hole of treatment plans. But we kind of touched on that already with talking about the insurance companies and how they manage themselves. So
yeah, I agree. We covered it in pretty depth. I mean, I know it doesn't seem like we covered a lot of mental health topics, but we covered a lot of mental health topics that will never be talked about elsewhere. So,
No.
as long as nobody comes for us, I think this is a great webcast. Who knows what triggers we might have tripped.
You talked about how the three main causes are the energetic, the something physical happening in the body, or something mental. And I just wanted to add on to that piece that sometimes it's combination. Sometimes the one triggers the other. Sometimes you have to go through several modalities to get it the whole way out of your system. And that's not always the easiest thing to figure out. But if you're working with someone who's familiar, at least, then you can go through the processes required to work through those.
Absolutely. So many of the traumas need a multi-level approach. That's why I like sacred plants, because they actually do work on a physical level, a mental level, and an energetic level. So people that do ayahuasca, people that do sacred mushroom journeys, it will physically work with the system. Ayahuasca will physically purge the system, physically cleanse the system. And so you'll be purging physically while you're purging energetically and releasing all that trauma.
Breathwork does the same thing.
Yeah, what does?
Transformational breathwork does the same thing, because it actually helps in doing transformational breathwork, you have your breath going in and out of your system, while you also are releasing natural DMT from your pineal gland. I always say that wrong. But you're releasing DMT that's stored in your pineal gland. And so same thing, you have that DMT running through your body as well as your breath going in and out.
Exactly. Or say like an MDMA therapy for PTSD or something like that. The people actually physically shake as it's releasing out of all their muscles and all that stored muscle tension. It will release it out. Or say you do it without any sort of plants or substances. So like say a trauma healing or an ERT, going in, doing like a regression hypnosis back to the original trauma, going through mentally releasing that energy with breath work, and then kind of re-scripting it. So that released the energetic charge and emotional charge. And then sometimes, this is something that I just realized recently, sometimes it's still really traumatic to the subconscious mind to know that some of these traumas happen. So by re-scripting it, you consciously know the trauma happened, but the subconscious mind goes, oh no, it happened like this. It's reprogramming the subconscious mind. Instead of this terrible event happened, no, it was just another day. So that takes off the mental charge off of it. But then physically, so after doing that and then doing a soul retrieval and an integration, balancing the energies of the body, well, what's left? The physical body. So that might require some massage work, some myofascial release, some cranial sacral to release the physical tension that has been holding that trauma in the body. So when all of that works, or working with the psoas muscle, that holds a lot of deep tension in the body. So by hitting all those different bodies, it might take all that to release a trauma completely.
Well, we also haven't touched on DNA.
Yeah,
even in the mainstream medical field, they are now acknowledging that trauma is actually stored in your DNA. It actually changes your DNA. And therefore, traumas that have happened generations back are literally loaded in your DNA. Now, the really cool thing is that you can change that. And that's something that's not often acknowledged. You can change your DNA through meditation. You can change it through regression therapy. You can change it through certainly the ERT, all these different modalities, things that Brian and I do all the time. You can change the DNA. And if you look at this on a quantum level, that not only heals you, it heals your children, it heals your ancestors, it heals everybody, because you are changing that modification to your DNA.
absolutely. So many of the trauma events that have happened, even the Great Depression, that lack mindset got programmed into the DNA. A lot of abusive cycles that have gotten programmed over thousands of years into our bloodlines and our DNA. We're now here to heal our bloodlines. This generation here is healing thousands of years of trauma through our genetics, through our bloodlines, and we are here to kind of correct that for future generations. And then not only that, our bloodlines, our genetics hold a lot of really positive memories and power. So spiritual parents will oftentimes have very spiritual kids, especially if you're very selective about the partner that you choose to create these children with. If you're both from spiritual bloodlines, well, that will amplify and magnify the child's spiritual propensity. And that's been known for a very long time in very special bloodlines and dynasties. One of them being the Merovingian dynasty, the line of European kings. And they know that, but they don't tell the general public that. So that's a lot of, in the early days when you'd see pharaohs inbreeding, marrying relatives to keep those bloodlines pure, keep that spiritual potency going on, or only marrying within royals that have very powerful bloodlines. So that was going on for thousands of years in a very selective way.
The interesting thing there, Brian, is that when you're looking at like royalty and, pharaoh bloodlines, that's a very obvious bloodline. Like everyone on the planet knew who that was, or everyone around knew who that was. But when you're talking about spiritual families, it's not always as obvious. So the interesting part is, even if you are not being selective with who you're breeding with, only certain individuals are going to even be attracted to that kind of a person because, spiritual people tend to have big energies. And so if your energy is potent enough and you're still able to have that kind of connection with someone, even if you're not careful, you're probably still going to have very spiritually powerful children.
Yeah, very, very much so. Oftentimes the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind or the super conscious mind will kind of arrange things in our life, whether we consciously know it or not. So this innate attraction to somebody might not just because of physical beauty, it might because of energetic compatibility or soul compatibility. It could even be on the unconscious level of being able to smell the genetics through the pheromones. This is something that I have a nose like a bloodhound. So I can smell this, and I can smell how I react to certain people's pheromones. Do I feel comfortable from them? Like, are they, like a familiar bloodline to me? Are they a compatible bloodline to me? Do they smell like a different tribe? So I can pick up on that and smell that. And so for me, it's a much more conscious level. I've tapped in and really explored my underlying subconscious driving factors and primal instincts. So now I can go, ooh, I'm smelling that, or I'm feeling this, but why am I feeling that? And choose to go with it or reject it and understand why and consciously choose it, because I am the master of my own destiny. I will not be controlled by urges or those subconscious driving factors, but I will listen to them because oftentimes instincts are correct. But now I can choose and measure it. Okay, is this something real or is it not?
Yeah, oftentimes instincts are correct, but only if you can differentiate between ego impulses and primal instincts, because they are not the same.
Yeah, that's very true. Is it fear-based, or is it, the knowing of the body, the knowing of the subconscious mind, the knowing of the superconscious mind? There's so many different aspects to it. And it's taken a long time for me to be able to differentiate these different information inputs that I experience.
Mm-hmm. But you're right. Anyone could master those things if they, put in the effort and went through the practice and trained themselves. They could.
Yeah, turn off the TV and sit in silence and listen to yourself. You don't have to go to a cave or a mountaintop to do that. However, it does work better. I love just being alone out on a mountaintop. It's so peaceful, and without any distractions, you just can really tap in and sit with yourself and listen to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are now at an hour and 20 minutes. Is there any other topics you wanted to talk about, or we will save some some topics for the next webcast? I just absolutely love today's episode. It was wonderful. We have a
Yeah,
lot of great audience. We couldn't have this webcast without you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to be bringing a lot more people on board. There's going to be a lot more interesting information coming through, and we're going to be unapologetically us. So it might be terse, it might be real, but you're going to get a lot of abject truth, and it's going to be interesting.
absolutely. I don't have anything else that I wanted to talk about. Are there any other questions that we should address before we cut this off?
We just got some comments from John. Thank you for sharing. John, you're a great guy. I've always loved talking to you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for
Thank you.
contributing. Yes, written in the stars. So I'm not sure where these comments were falling in. So sometimes it gets a little
Okay.
bit lost. Universe works in magical ways. I'd love to connect. That's great. Feel free to reach out. InfiniteLoveMovement.org is my website. You can book sessions through there. I'm going to get my classes up and going to get those booked very soon as well. Also, my Facebook profile, Brian Daniel Edwards. Feel free to follow me. Reach out, message me. Yeah. Then we are one. Yeah, there's a that's a very true statement on a very powerful level. We really are all one.
We are one, but we are pieces of one. So
Yeah.
we all look a little different. We all have our own unique aspects that are uniquely ours, but we are all connected.
That's very true. We are all unique personalities and projections of the one. So just like Hinduism, is it monotheistic or polytheistic? It's both. There's only one creator, but there's all these personalities of that creator. So if we mirror that down to our level, we are all a personality of the creator. So we're all a thread in that tapestry of creation. We might not be the tapestry in the whole, but we're a thread in that tapestry.
Yes.
Okay, any more comments? Yep, unique journey, same path.
Yeah.
So, okay, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'm sure we have plenty of segues we could go into, but we'll save that for later episode.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Pay attention, looking for our future webcasts and future workshops. Such a great comment. Thank you. Love you both.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's so
Thank
sweet.
you so much for having me on here, Brian. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, I really want to build the organization and bring more people on. I absolutely love that you're here. We got a comment. So I'd love to have classrooms and workshops and stuff that we put on together and start making this happen in a very powerful way all around the country and all around the world. So I definitely see this going very well. I would like to make this webcast a regular thing. So everybody get ready for some really interesting information coming through. If you want to book sessions with either of us, what are your details? They can find you on your website. We're going to get you up on Infinite Love as well, and get your profile in there so they can book with you on that website.
In the meantime, you can find me at crossingbridgeswellness.com, and you can book with me through there. Or you could also email Infinite Love Movement and Brian. I'm hooked in with that network. So Brian will make sure if you wanted to speak with me that you can. It's probably the easiest way.
Yeah. Okay. So either way, reach out to us on Facebook or through the website. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Aloha. Let me find the video. Okay. Thank you. Aloha.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this video session. Please support the Infinite Love Movement by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Visit theinfinitelovemovement.org to sign up for healing sessions, classes, and events with Brian.